Hey guys, it's Mike, and if you've ever gone to lease commercial real estate space, there's probably a good chance that you have questions on how do I calculate this price per square foot? Is it based off of a price per square foot per year, or is it per month? What other information do I need in order to figure out what is the monthly cost to rent this space? So let's get comfy. Generally speaking, when we're talking about commercial real estate leasing, we look at that price per square foot, and that's usually on an annual basis. So if you see $24 per square foot, it's per year, and then you would divide that yearly number by 12. Now, if it is on a monthly basis, it should be specified per month. Or if you've been looking at other properties in that area and you notice that they're, $24 per square foot, and this one for some reason is $2 per square foot, it's probably an indication that they're using a monthly calculation. So in order to calculate it, you need the square footage. Now, there's technically two different types of square footage. Go figure. There's usable square footage and rentable square footage. So the usable square footage is going to be obviously the space that you're using. The rentable square footage depends on if there's any common areas in that building. You also want to check on what type of lease is this. If you haven't checked it out already, make sure to look at our net versus gross lease video that goes over the different types of leases and the additional costs that may be involved if you're on a certain type of lease. For example, I'm in a space here that's 100 square feet, we'll call it. I have hallways outside of here. Well, if I was sharing this space with other tenants and we have a common area between us, being a hallway, maybe a restroom, a cafeteria, atrium, all those type of things, we have to split those common areas up proportionately to the amount of space that we're using in the building. And so, for example, let's say we have 100,000 square foot office building. Let's say there's 15,000 square foot of that building is actually used for common area space. So when you do the calculation there, you have a 15% loss factor is what we call it. Now, what we do then is we go to each tenant and we apply that 15% loss factor on top of their usable square footage. So if I'm a tenant and I have 5,000 square feet of space of usable square footage, now I have to add that 15% back on, which gives me 5,750 square feet. That 5,750 square feet, that rentable square footage, is the square footage that we use to apply towards the rental rate. So in just a really easy example, 5,750 square feet times, let's say, a $10 rate tells me that I'm going to be at $57,500 per year for a lease. To figure out the monthly rent, then you're going to divide that number by 12. Now, the loss factor, why it's important to you as a tenant, it's going to be a question depending on what your goals and requirements are for that property. If you're in a building that has all these additional amenities, a lot of common area space, that may be very attractive to you and you're willing to pay for that. However, if you are in a building like that and you really don't find any value or you're not utilizing those spaces, you may be paying a premium for it, and you could most likely, if there's another building in the area, you might be better off moving to that space that doesn't have all those amenities. So really it's going to be dependent upon your goals and your requirements for space. And if you're in a building like that for talent acquisition or retention or just employee morale or just efficiencies of the day, then you'll definitely find value in that. But if you're someone that, maybe you're on a hybrid schedule with your staff, maybe not everyone's working in the office every day, maybe they're remote, may not be as applicable. And so that's where you might find another building to be more affordable because those amenities aren't in there. If I'm a landlord, how does that impact me by not factoring in that loss factor? Well, you're probably leaving money on the table. I have seen some landlords that they just increase the rental rate and multiply it times the usable square footage, and that may work in certain circumstances. But if you're in a market where there's comparable leases in that area, anyone that's looking at your price per square foot, because you're charging more, you're not figuring in that loss factor, it's going to be apples and oranges most likely on that cost per square foot. So you might be at $25 a square foot and your competition might be at $20 a square foot, just because they're figuring out the loss factor in their square footage, they're not figuring it out the rental rate. And so although I have seen it happen, granted, when it did work was because there was limited supply for that particular product. But my recommendation would be figure out the loss factor and then apply it to each one of those units. Might be difficult to do it all at once. tenants, if you have existing tenants, and especially if it's 15% or higher loss factor, that's going to be pretty steep increase come renewal time. Maybe it's something you work out gradually over a set period of time. Alternatively, I guess you could, by increasing that square footage, you could decrease the rental rate to where your market is and then apply it that way as well. If you're a landlord or manager and you're looking at doing an addition on a building and there's going to be an additional common area space, you want to make sure how is that going to impact your tenants. I had a client who was in a Class A office building, and the building owner decided to increase the atrium size, and they put an addition on the atrium. Nice atrium, but at the end of the day, the owner didn't appreciate the increased square footage at his renewal that then increased his rental rate pretty significantly. And needless to say, contacted me. They tried working it out with the landlord, couldn't come to a resolution. We found them something else and they moved. And so it actually was a negative impact initially, but then you're down time, right, for vacancy. You've got marketing costs that go into it. You got commissions that get paid out. And then the new tenant's going to ask for free rent, tenant improvement allowance if they're doing build out, and all the other things that go with it. Working with contractors, any other maintenance items that need to be touched up in the space. So what does it cost to lose a tenant? That could be pretty steep. Definitely easier to retain a tenant than going out there and finding a new one. Now, when may you see a loss factor not be applied? Well, generally speaking, it's usually if you're a single tenant in a building. So let's say you're an industrial user and you occupy that whole building yourself. Well, there's really no common area space there. So the usable square footage is the rentable square footage. Well, it's that time of day when I need to go to sleep. So good night, God bless, and I'll catch you on the next one.